And that was actually the largest company in the world, bar none. I mean, the revenue.
For
And
Aramco?
that was my big account. And the problem was when you went, back in the 70s, and 80s, you would get an appointment with whoever someone in production or whatever you wanted. And then you left the building. And you couldn't get back in unless you had another appointment, and the guy you had an appointment with put your name at the front gate. So basically, you fly all the way to Saudi Arabia, you have an hour and a half meeting, and then the rest of the day, you're nothing to do. Well, you know how that works with me. I couldn't handle that. And so most of they didn't really have hotels. They had converted houses, big houses, and that's where you live. That's where you. And in the what you might call the living room, you had all these guys playing cards, playing bridge, playing chess, playing different card games all day long, because they made their one call. And so I decided I wasn't gonna. I couldn't do that. And my choices were to stay in my room and draw, or sit out on the steps and draw, or do something, or find a way that I could stay in the Aramco building, which is a 6-story building. So I decided, okay, once I'm in that building, I'm gonna make my appointment early, and once I'm in that building, I'm not leaving until 5 o'clock. That was my goal. And so I had my meeting, maybe with a geologist or an oil field production guy, and so now it's like 10:30, 11 o'clock, and I figured, okay, I'm not leaving here till 5. What the hell am I going to do? So I developed this process called what I called walk the halls, and so I would walk around the hall, and if nobody closed the door. Mm-hmm. So if I walked by an office and there's a guy sitting there, and I had eye contact, I would say, "Hey, how you doing?" And then sometimes they say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I always had a shirt and tie on and a suit. Nobody else did. Everybody, because it's Saudi Arabia. It's 124 degrees outside, but I always appeared with a suit, a fresh shirt, and a tie, and the people I visited would say, "Hey, you don't have to work." I said, "No." I said, "I feel comfortable. I'd always say I'd like to keep my passport here," and they say, "Oh yeah, okay." And so anyhow, I walked the hall, and I would go all around the first floor. And at 10 o'clock in the morning and at 2, they had tea, which these guys would come around in carts. And they couldn't bring the tea to your office. They would let you know that they're outside, and you would come out and get a cup of tea, okay, and take it back in your office. So I migrate around the first floor, then I move up to the second floor, and then I move up to the third floor, and the fourth floor, and I didn't have the balls to go to the 5th or 6th floor, because that's where the real, and so after about 6 months, I said, "Hey, that's what I said to myself. I said, my balls are as big as their balls, so I'm going to go up the next floor." I'm a little graphic, but that's the way I think,
Yeah.
And so now I'm up on the 5th floor, and I did that route. I met all the VPs and what have you, and I had a fairly good relationship with them. But I still hadn't hit the 6th floor. And so now a year into my walk around program, I figured, okay, I gotta hit the top floor. And this is where the president.
Kind of like the C-suite.
Pardon?
Kind of like the C-suite.
Yeah. There's been big time stuff. I mean, these are internationally known people, and so I go up, and just coincidentally, I didn't plan it, but I was up there about 2 o'clock, and they had the tea cart down in the corner office, and this guy walks out just as I'm approaching the cart, and he walks out, and he got a pair of cowboy boots on, lizards. He had
Oh
lizards.
yeah, oh yeah.
And so he came out and he got his coffee, and he turned around to go into his office. And I said, "Sir," that's what I did. I said, "Okay." I said, "Are they Tony Lama lizards?" Tony Lama is the cowboy boots guy. And he turned around and he smiled, and he had an accent. And this is no joke. I said, "Are you a coon ass?" He said, "How'd you guess?" I said, "Yeah." He said, he was the president of the Humble Oil Refinery in Louisiana.
Wow.
And Louisiana, coon ass is a cop. You know that? You familiar with that term?
Yeah.
You know, they have all the raccoons in the bayou and what have you.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah. He said, what are you doing here? I said, well, with FMC, we're doing the project on the terminal. He said, oh, he said, yeah. He said, how's that going? He said, that's a big one. He said, the king's going to be there for inaugural. I said, oh, I didn't know that. He said, yeah. And he said, well, come on in. So I go in, here's the president of Aramco, okay? And they used to switch presidents between the Aramco countries, like which is Chevron, Mobil, Exxon, and somebody else, before the Saudi government took it over. And so I'm in there talking to the guy, and we're talking like we're best of friends. And he said, yeah, he said, well, hey, anytime you're here, he said, stop in. I said, oh man, well, stop in. So every time I went there, and of course he was interested in knowing how the progress was going on the terminal, because this is the world's largest crude oil shipping terminal. And I got the order for the world's largest marine loading arms ever. And there still is the largest terminal in the world, shipping more crude oil per day than any place in the world. To loading arms that I sold. I mean,
Yeah. Big deal.
And so one time I was up there, and we were in his office. And I'm actually giving him a legitimate update because they want to know, because now it's getting close to the time when the king was going to come down, and they wanted to make sure the timing was right. And so we're standing there, and the tea guy comes. And again, he doesn't bring tea to you. You have to come out of your office and get it. So we go out, and there's this long line of male secretaries. And out of the other corner office, this guy comes out, all dressed in his garb, with Sheikh Yamani. And Sheikh Yamani was he was the founder of OPEC. And of course, I did some research on him, because I knew his office was there. And so I know a little bit about him. And so he came out and he get his tea, and he said hi, but he wasn't very sociable. He had a lot, seemed like he had a lot on his mind. And I figured, holy hell, and so he gets his tea, and he's walking back to his office. And this is no kidding. I said, sir, and he turned around. I said, what position did you play on Harvard's football team? And he bust out laughing. He said, I didn't play football at Harvard. I said, yeah, I know you didn't. I said, you couldn't make the team. So he came back over. He said, how'd you know that? And he said, I didn't know that. But he tried out for a Harvard football team, and he didn't make it.
I'll be darned. You knew he went to Harvard?
Pardon?
Did you know he went to Harvard? Or?
Yeah, well, I did research on everybody that I could get research on. This is before the internet, so you have to ask a lot of questions and what have you. Be prepared. Just that's what I say. People say, "Oh, you got lucky." Yeah, I got lucky because I worked 18 hours a day, and I studied like hell to try to find out who I might run into. That's the way love works. People that stay home and don't do anything don't get very lucky.
That's right. I fully agree with that. It's hard to convince young people that that's the way it works, but you're absolutely right, Jim.
So I get invited to this deal,